Hey everybody, John Peterson here, and right now we are in the middle of fall foliage season and a lot of the colors are popping out there on the trees. And I wanted to put together a short video for you guys showing you how I process an example of my fall foliage photographs, what I look for, what I do. A lot of my processing is not heavy-handed. I use both Lightroom and Photoshop, and I've got a couple of plugins for Photoshop. I'll just show you a couple of them, not really in-depth editing, but it gives you an idea of the gist and the thought processes that go in to my thinking of what I want to do when I process my fall foliage. So take a look at this and let me know what you think. If you got any suggestions down below or any other thoughts, leave them in the comments. Thanks for watching. All right, let's go ahead and jump right into this image. This is a shot I took last year up near Mount Adams in Washington, and I was exploring out some Forest Service roads and saw this great little scene and thought I would give it a shot and capture it. And I shot this both horizontally and vertically and wanted to decide when I got home which one I liked best. And right now I like the vertical one best because the trees are a vertical element and I want to accentuate the tree trunks and the height. And so I like the portrait orientation better for this kind of shot. And with the forest road in the shot, I want somebody to follow the road to the back. And this perspective helps sort of lengthen, subconsciously it kind of lengthens the road and invites you to go in the back, where more of a landscape orientation is a little bit of a flatter perspective and you don't get as much like front to back perception as you do potentially with a vertical composition. Now, the way I choose to edit images is I'll do some global processing in Lightroom, and then I will go over to Photoshop and do a lot of my targeted adjustments. So that's the way I normally work things. You can do a lot of the same things that I do, if only in Lightroom, if you want to stay in Lightroom. It's really kind of up to you what you want to do. So for this image, what are the things that I want to do? Before I start moving sliders, I want to start making a recipe or a map that I'm going to follow, at least loosely in my head, of the types of edits that I want to do. So looking at this image, what I see is the yellows they're nice, but they could use a little bit of vibrance and saturation. They're also a little bright. These yellow leaves on the side are kind of the brightest thing in the image, and our eyes tend to go to the brightest thing in the image. And so I may want to tone down the brightness of those to help them blend better with the rest of the forest scene. This is one that I will want to put some Orton effect on, and I know that when I do Orton, what it's going to do is pop some of the highlights and darken some of the shadows. So whatever I do initially here in Lightroom, I want to do it with an eye towards how the Orton effect is going to change the tonality of the image. Some of the things I want to do, I want to create a little bit more depth in this. I maybe want to bring a little bit of the saturation in the greens, but that stuff is going to come somewhat when I apply the Orton effect to this image. But initially, let's just look at what vibrance does to this. Brings out a little bit more color in all of the colors that need vibrance. So those pixels that aren't too vibrant, what it does is it really kind of boosts that up a little bit. One of the things I like to do from a color perspective is sometimes go down into this calibration panel and add a little bit of blue, because it helps richen up some of the colors. You know, I know that I'm going to be doing a lot of other types of edits in Photoshop. And so I don't want to do too much, but what I did mention is the yellows. I maybe want to bring those down a little bit. So in the HSL color panel of Lightroom, I've got yellow selected, and if I just take the luminance slider and drag that down just a little bit, you can see how it darkens some of the yellows a little bit. Let's try that. So now let's pop over into Photoshop, and I can really get working on this image the way I like it. Okay, here we are in Photoshop. Now, some of you may groan at this, but one of the first things that I do is I spend a considerable amount of time cleaning up visual noise in my images. I want to have my images quiet. I don't want to have anything that can distract from the story, the feeling, or the subject. So the first thing that I typically do is scan the entire image and spend a few minutes cleaning things up. And I won't make you sit through this whole thing, but I'll just identify. If you look at this bright leaf right here, that really catches the eye. All of these little leaves sort of catch the eye. Remember, our eyes are drawn to bright parts of the image. This gap in the trees back here is bright. I want to make that go away because I don't want the viewer looking back here in the forest. I want them to stay right here near the road and the yellow trees. Got some bright spots up here. I've got this bit of red up here that I'll clean up. One of the other things I don't like is really bright things right on the edge of my frame, because that can grab the viewer's subconscious attention and potentially lead them out of the frame. So, like this little leaf that's half in and half out, I want to make that go away. This bright spot over here, I'll make that go away. And then I will spend another few minutes cleaning up all the bright spots. So here we go into fast forward. Okay, that's quick enough for this particular demonstration. So the next thing I do, because I know how impactful the Orton effect can be on the overall tonality and colors in the image, I want to apply that first so that then I can base all of my other edits off of what is done. If I went and started messing around with the different colors or the lights or the darks and then applied Orton effect, it would screw up all the work that I had already done and basically waste that kind of work. So I've got an action set up to run Orton. There's a lot of different ways you can do it. If you use the TK panels, there's an Orton effect in the TK panels. There's many different ways to do it, but I built myself an Orton Action many years ago and keep using it because I like the effect of it. So if I run that action, you will see that the dark's got a bit darker and the light's got a bit lighter, and there's this beautiful glow across the image. Now at this point, it's really up to me how much of this Orton effect I want. It's set to come in at a 36% opacity. I might try to slide that down just a little bit where I want some glow, but I don't want to impact the entire image. So let's say I like that. It still made it brightened up the yellows more than I would want. So what I want to do, and I'm using the TK8 panels, and I'll use the multi-mask, and I'll select this yellow color to try to create a mask targeting this yellow color. So let me go ahead and do that, see what the application selects. You can see everything that's white. Remember, white reveals and black conceals. Everything that's white or shades of gray are things that are within that color tonal range. And what I want to do is kind of narrow that down a little bit. So I'll use the color slider here to try to bring this down and really just target these leaves as much as I can. Let me just narrow the mask a little bit more, a little bit more. And then if I still don't like what's kind of been done, let's say I don't want to affect the forest floor of the road, I can take a black paintbrush and paint out areas of the image that I don't want adjusted. I think I've got that tree isolated enough. Now I can just kind of focus on these really bright yellows. And one of the ways that I like to sort of reduce the brightness of things, not with a brightness slider, but with curves, I think it gives a little bit better effect. It's less blunt and muted. So if I drag the curves down just a little bit, it still has a pop to it and a vibrancy to it, but it's not bright and overpowering. So that's with the adjustment, that's without the adjustment. With the adjustment, without the adjustment. So I like that. I think that's great. One of the things that I do in a lot of my images is I will add a little bit of mid-tone contrast. And I do that to add a little depth and dimensionality to the information that's in these images. So again, using the TK multi-mask panel, I want to select a mid-tone 1 mask. I don't want a really broad mask. I want to just sort of keep it a little bit narrow. And to add a little bit of contrast, again, I'll use curves and I'll put a slight S-curve into this. So I'll darken some a little bit to where I like it, and then I'll add back some of the highlights in the midtones. And it just creates a little bit more punch to the whole thing. So that's with it, that's without it, it's with it, without it. Creates a little bit of a darker, moodier scene in this, and that I like. As I said before, our eyes are drawn to the brightest parts of an image. And what I want for this image is for people to end up to follow this road all the way back. So what I can do is start to use some light shaping and target some lighter adjustments in the image to help people make their way towards the back of the image. And one of the easiest ways to do that is with a dodge tool. And you can either have it on a transparent layer or a gray layer using the combo panel here. So let's just do it. Let's just paint with white. And I want to have an opacity for my brush about 2 to 3%. I don't want to make big adjustments all at once. I want to slowly build up the adjustments in my image. So first off, I kind of want to target this back area a little bit. This landing spot, there's a little bit more light here. And I want to brighten this up a little bit to make it more inviting for people. So that's with it, that's without it, with it, without it. A little bit sloppy, but I know you guys get the point. And it just with those few brush strokes, it tells me 3% is maybe too much. So let's try to back it down to 2, because I want to do a little bit of work in the foreground and I don't want my adjustments to be too evident. The next thing I want to do is really kind of just subtly highlight these tracks that you can follow the road. So I'll just drag up, just do a little bit of dodging along these tracks to help brighten those up just a smidge for people. You can see there's before and there's after. And it makes it more inviting for people to visually travel along the road towards the back of the image. Usually at this point, I find other things that I need to clean up that might bother me. And so I'll go back to the background layer, hit my J key, and I can see this bright branch here kind of sticks out. So maybe we'll get rid of that. This brighter bark bothers me just a little bit. So we'll try to get rid of that, help it blend in just a smidge. So I'll scan around the image. I've got a little bit of brightness poking in from the left-hand side of the frame. And this little half a leaf poking in, I'll clean up. A lot of this stuff is just sort of make work sometimes. But I think that by quieting a lot of these brighter spots, it helps people's subconscious focus on where I want them to look. So I've used a little bit of light shaping. I've added Orton to create a moody effect. And then the last thing that I do for 100% of my images is I add a vignette. A vignette does a couple of things. It helps viewers focus on the subject. I can place the vignette sort of in the middle of the frame, or I can do kind of a freehand vignette and place the vignette wherever I want. But the main intent is to help darken the borders and then drive and keep the center light so people will naturally drive to the brightest part of the image. So the other thing it does as well, it adds depth and dimension to an image. And remember, we're shooting 3D subjects here on a 2D medium. So anything that I can do to bring depth and dimension to the image is fantastic. So with that, I've got in the TK combo panel, I've got a vignette action that I can run real quick. I'll just accept the default value, and when it comes in at 50% opacity. You can see over here. That's without it, and that's with it. And then it's up to me as the artist whether I want to keep that opacity or take it down a little bit. I generally end up somewhere between 30 and 40% for many of my images. Sometimes I'm down as low as 15 to 20 if I just want a very subtle vignette. So at 35%, we went from that to that, and it helps just drive people right into the center of the frame towards the back of the image. So real quickly, in just a few minutes, we went from that, which is a flat, bright, plain image, to that, which has mood, which has depth, which has some intrigue to it. So there you go. There's a quick little tutorial on editing a fall forest scene and how I approach, generally, a lot of these kinds of edits. So thanks for watching. I'm John Peterson. Stay tuned for more videos, and I hope you guys have a great day. All right, bye-bye.